So today I'll just present or tell you something about the center we opened 3 years ago at the Institute of Literary Research, and I just tried to put it in this sort of chronological time frame. There's this life cycle of digital humanities centers, according to Zurich, and there's birth, youth, midlife, maturity, and if you move further along the line, it means that you get more sort of structured, formal, and I would like to think that we're more or less somewhere here, like experiencing our youth. Of course, there are some deaths and funerals, as Stephen Ramsey once said, that they usually happen in bars, you know, in a gloomy atmosphere. But let's not talk about this. Let's talk about nice beginnings. Our beginning sort of happened 3 years ago, as I mentioned, and the reason for this talk and, let's say, rationale behind it is that not so long time ago, a friend of mine asked me, called me and said, it's sort of urgent because, my dean called me and said, I heard about this digital humanities thing, and it's sort of nice. So perhaps you can set up some sort of center at our on our faculty. I mean, it sounds nice and sexy. And he said, okay, what should I do? I mean, how do you do it? And how did you do it? And what are the steps? And I don't know. Whatever. So I tried to offer him some guidance from my experience, and I thought it could be useful just to put it in one place, to like a story of how we deal with certain problems and how we try to establish this center. And I wouldn't say it's an exemplary center. It's rather an example, a typical small discipline-specific center in literary studies with strong focus on its discipline. And basically what could be interesting in it as well is that it's, as I put here, like second generation, but second generation also in terms of like human generations, because the first, I recently learned the first digital humanities center in the US was opened in 1978. And I was not around by that time, but yesterday we learned that the first digital humanities center in Belgium was opened in 1983, and I was one by then. So you see that now when we are establishing something here, we are also learning from the experiences of others. We can look at other countries, at their experiences, but also we sort of create our structures in a bit different atmosphere, I would say. So what follows is just the take on how we did it and, how it could be done. And I'm also opening discussion to later on to see what experiences of others are. So I just put those steps I found quite useful for thinking about setting up a center, running it, and keeping it alive, not going too fast towards this death at the end of the scale. And let's go sort of quickly, because we don't have much time, through all those points. So first of all, of course, there's a need. The need is crucial. So our need, and this is probably interesting for this stage of whatever digital humanities, was basically the fact that we were doing digital humanities at the Institute. We have lots of projects. We were involved in external projects. So it was rather the question of dispersion. So we doubled efforts. We didn't have adequate IT support. We had similar projects ran on completely different platforms, and there were no standards, no interoperability, no thinking beyond the narrow project, the thing we just want to do right now. So we can call this Monsieur Jourdain effect. Monsieur Jourdain, who learned he was speaking prose, and suddenly some people learned that, hey, we're doing digital humanities, so this is something which can be standardized. It's something that it's not that unique. And so the need was to sort of put it all together. But of course, if you have a need, you have to have a means to answer it. So in our case, There were two good, let's say, circumstances. First of all, we had like strong institutional support, and we did have some financial means from the a special restructuring grant from the Ministry of Education. So we developed the hybrid model for our center, which is probably also not so unique. So we were based on the institute's permanent staff and some collaborators funded from projects, from grants. We developed our structures thanks to this restructuring grant. We're actively seeking further funding and development, and our institution tries to support the projects in the interim periods between funding cycles, not to get the teams dispersed. So. The third thing would be people. So finding the right people in other departments of our institute with interest, with experiences in digital projects, and with the will to cooperate, with the will to do something. Because experience and interest does not often or not always mean that they would like to work together. And we tried to put the diverse team together, but also that meant for our institutions that sort of elevation of the formerly neglected stuff like archivists, librarians, and also literary documentation officers who were also considered supportive staff. But now, through all those changes, they were now participating in research projects, and that was also a huge change in the landscape of the institution. So, and of course, we need initiation. We need a symbol that we started. We need something, the banner, to gather around, a clear signal that something has changed. And the clear signal for us was the series of events we ran in November 2013. We ran the first DAT Camp in Warsaw, along with the conference in Polish on text of participatory culture, so digital-born textuality, more or less. And there was a panel on digital humanities in Poland, the panel in English, with the special guest Marko Tadzic from University of Zagreb representing Clarin, but also with so eminent guests as Maciej Eder, Maciej Piasecki from Clarin PL, Jan Rybicki, who's present here, Piotr Wciślik, by then representing Open Society Archives in Budapest. Now he's working with us. So this was our symbol. Another symbol for initiation was, of course, creating a logo. We just decided that we want our project also to be nice and visible, so there's no need, if we do humanities, it's not like it has to look like the humanities. We want it to look really modern, and I can brag about it for a second. We just got like a prize for this logo, so that's the great outcome. So we started with inventory. So once we already set up, we said, okay, we're doing the center. We had to know what we have, actually, and that was, of course, the problem. So we started with assessing the full potential of the institution. So first of all, assessing existing projects with all those different standards, assessing our digitized resources, formats used, but also resources which could be further used for DH projects, but are still, let's say, in catalogs like this resource, or cardboard or whatever. So we started a period of iteration. We put the projects together, tried to map them somehow, came up with this sort of plan for inventory, which was the base for the next step. And the next step was strategy, so planning what to do next, how to proceed. So, based on this inventory, we developed a 5-year digital strategy for the institute, starting with mission statement, like what we really want to do, focusing on certain areas and defining our main areas of expertise, which would range for scholarly editions, bibliography, lexicography. Probably we could also add digital literary research here as well. We named key projects, allocated some funding from the grant we have. We suggested some policy amendments for institutes. So you see how this new sort of center started to extrapolate to the entire institution. Using our expertise, we propose some changes for general model of governing digital issues in the institution. In our strategy, we also put some ideas for further grant applications, designed the digitization schedule for key resources, and blueprint for training activities, and just to provide some outreach for our actions to gather people, to get them better prepared, and to gather people from the institute to start using some methods or tools. So implementation, and here I will just go quite fast through main projects we started, we're running currently. That's Polish Studies newsletter. This is a collaboration of 30 faculties in Poland, a sort of newsletter for digital for Polish studies in Poland. Now we're trying to also attract the institutes from abroad. We're cooperating on this with Poznań Center, Supercomputing Center, and other projects we started as a new panorama of Polish literature. This is a project for publishing new ways of publishing scientific materials, research materials. One example from the panorama is the Atlas of Polish Romanticism, unfortunately still in Polish, but the good news is it's the English version should appear by the end of the next year. So using digital visualization tools to tell about literature. Other projects, repository, dictionary, lexicon of writers, Polish literary bibliography. I'm just dropping it here, and of course I can elaborate on it during the break or whatever. Other important part of implementation, it was already raised here many times, it's training. We invited guests from abroad, from all over Poland, to set up training sessions, to improve our skills, to invite also people from other faculties, from other institutions to participate and to build this digital humanities community. And of course, collaborations. So here is the sum of the institutions we collaborated on different levels, with different sources. But then again, we thought it's not good. We should expand. We cannot close ourselves in the silo and do only our own stuff. We need to cooperate also globally. Our center has a delegate in Nedima, and also we right now we're participating in some works done by 2 working groups of Daria, and then. Of course, elephant in the room, the sustainability. So our model, as I already mentioned here, is based on the mixture of funding sources, and let's hope it will last more or less. But also with the strong support from the institutions, because otherwise we would just have to shut down straight after the funding period ended. So further development. I mean, during the first funding phase, we managed to apply to really many sources. We got quite a nice amount of grants for development of particular projects, and right now we also got the second funding phase for the special restructuring subsidy. So we can develop key projects, but also open new areas and explore new methods. So we sort of probably recreate in some way the steps I just described. Some like a moral. We the first keynote gave us like the list of 10 really pertinent issues for the center. I would just give the 4 we find important for this young phase or this youth phase for establishing one. So I would name this strong institutional support at the first place, probably, and potential of individual members who would just drag you, who will just make your center flourish. That's important. And interinstitutional cooperation, and of course stable funding. That's something we all know. Shouldn't mention it. And the last thing, main problems and challenges. If I just were to list them, first, sustainability, it was already addressed. So not IT experts. So this was our main problem, that as a literary study institutions, we were actually unable to hire any permanent IT professional. We tried for a really long time. So our model is based on cooperation with other institutions or with commercial partners, but we don't have also money to create a stable IT unit. And something like I would call grantosis. So this kind of syndrome that if you see money, you just apply, whatever you do. And this is something which also keeps us going, but also something really distracting for the team. So people just don't do much, but they just write grant applications, and then they write reports and whatever. And I found it quite a problem that it's also really distracting for us, and we don't know which project will succeed, which not, and that's a problem. And of course, lack of funding, I don't have to elaborate on it, but also overfunding. So this moment that all those grants suddenly, becomes successful, and you just also have to work on them. But I mean, it's not the biggest. I think probably it's the smallest problem of those mentioned, and probably the one I would like to wish you all to have this last one. So thanks for your attention. I'll take the questions.
Thank you very much. We have time for 2 questions at least. So I mean, at last. Yes, please. Yes, just wait a little bit for the microphone.
I think the grantosis is a wonderful word. We take a slightly different approach to it in Cork. What we've decided to do is we have certain things that we're interested in, and if a grant opportunity comes out, we look at the words and we take what we're interested in and we write it so that we can sort of fit what we're interested in to what the application might give us money for. So we keep on doing what we're interested in, and if we happen to pick up money for it, well and good. So it's not a question of readjusting our strategy to fit the grant. We write our grant applications creatively so that they fit our research strategy in the longer term. I wouldn't say we lie, but...
Of course not.
Please, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, the comment is, yeah, I mean, this is the perfect strategy. Although, I mean, the main problem could be that sometimes there are no other funding sources, and the funding sources you have are really specific, and then of course there's a trade-off. But usually, I mean, in most cases, we apply for expanding some avenues of our research, but sometimes they're like really diverse. That's true, and we cannot plan it. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, thank you.
This will be the last question.
Yeah, just a brief question about what is your experience with the third-party solution, so to say, when you are not able to hire IT specialists, or you're outsourcing things. What are your experiences in this doing this?
This is an excellent question. Actually, we have we tested 3 models, and all of them have advantages and disadvantages. I think the worst model was this magic guy who was somewhere around, and doing stuff, and then suddenly he would disappear, or it came out that something he did is like completely, unreadable for the other person. So it was the model we had before the establishment of the center. There was like some person who would do something, for you. And we right now we're balancing between 2 models. I mean, one model is like a strong institutional cooperation with IT institutions, and namely, in our case, it's Poznań Supercomputing Center. We had yesterday the presentation. I mean, we ran together like a big grant on bibliography, and they're a partner on the Polish Studies newsletter. And basically, we also apply for other stuff. So this is like a close collaboration with them. But also, we also let's say diverge these sources of IT services, and we also have like a team. It is a sort of company of freelance IT programmers who are also artists, which is interesting. I mean, they basically are interactive artists who also work in IT, and they also do some projects for us. But so it's not like that we just hire them once in a while, but it's a sort of stable work with certain projects. So this is how we balance it. But on the other hand, I wouldn't, I would say that it would be good to have at least like one permanent IT position. But it came out it's impossible. Nobody wants to work with us. I mean, probably we cannot afford people who would like. So so that was the problem.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
once again.